So,
our swear words are different than yours, so that's even funnier.
A very good evening, everybody. We are now live, coming to you from the Paul Christian Spiritualist Church on the south coast of the UK. We are across the pond tonight with a wonderful gentleman, the Rev Bryan Peters. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation. So, Reverend Bryan, along with Reverend Shane and Reverend Michael, run.
Absolutely.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. They run the Healing Brew Cafe in Akron, in Ohio. And here's the lovely city of Akron. Looks very pretty.
Yes, we're actually just south of Cleveland. We're not a major city by no means. We are on the smaller side of stuff. If anybody has Goodyear tires actually came from Akron, Ohio. And then Quaker Oats also got its start here in Akron. We're about an hour south of Cleveland. And we're about an hour north of the Bible Belt in the United States. So we're in a very interesting location as far as being close to Lilydale, close to the spiritual aspects up here in the north. And then as I stated, just as we get a little bit south there, we get more into the religious side of the house as we get farther south in the United States.
I did do a little bit of homework. Akron, you're noted for your corn and your soya.
Yep.
The birthplace of aviation. And also it's noted that it's a very inspirational city. It is a city, isn't it?
Yep, it is a city. We're a city. We don't get it. I always laugh and say town, city. For us in the U.S., town is very much a smaller community. Akron is definitely a city. It has a major university. They actually has 2 colleges in it and everything like that.
Brilliant. But your part of Akron, the Healing Brew Cafe, could you tell us just a wee bit about that? Because this is something we don't see in the UK. We have churches, we have centres, and there is a very small smattering of shops and coffee shops, but nothing by the degree and certainly by the prolific amount of things you put on. I was looking at your agenda there and I was like, wow.
Really, truly, what we did was we always did psychic fairs. We do a whole slew of psychic fairs throughout Ohio. We do a new psychic fair every Sunday and everything like that. And a group of us got together and said, what would it take to create a business that embodied this? That would be able to take a psychic fair and bring it to a location for a daily basis situation. And at the same time, I'm an herbalist. I always fancied teas and all that stuff. And so the idea was, what would it take if we smashed this together? Because you and I both know some of the best conversations ever come out of a kitchen, out of those times that you sit at the dinner table with old friends and, you have a cup of tea and you're just sitting there having these intense conversations. And you just, as we say, you go down a rabbit hole and things just unfold. And that's really what it's all about. It's really about making these connections. It's about making these efforts to share conversation with other people. And at the same time, like we talk about, taking care of mind, body, and spirit. People do a really good job at taking care of the spirit. People do a really good job at taking care of the body. But when it comes to putting it all together is where I think people run into a disjointedness. They don't really practice the 3. And you and I both know, and I'm sure you guys do the community lunches, you guys do, the cookie exchanges and things like that, where people come together and eat. But it's sharing that it's sharing that camaraderie, it's sharing that community-ness, which is just as important as any of the other things. I can tell you everything under the sun, but without that community element, things fall apart.
We're not so much on the community side of eating together. Quite a few of the churches and centres will do like a fish and chip supper with a medium, so you have a reading. It's not a commonplace. I was talking to Rev Bryan down in Florida, because for a while he was running a centre there, and they would have a luncheon after the service. And I went, that's a really good idea. But he said, you know, people can drive like 3, 4, 5 hours to get to a place. So, you know, we want a meal. It's a bigger part of the equation, rather than in the UK, we are doubly blessed and cursed to have a spiritualist church or centre probably within half an hour of where we live. Wherever you live in the UK, it's that prolific. But the standard format of the churches and centres here are the demonstrations of mediumship, the divine services, and sadly, not a lot else. That's not for everybody. There are some churches doing amazing things. We've got a lovely lady, Susie Woodley. Hello. And I know the church she's associated with. They do what I call lovingly the standard. So we'll do a demonstration of mediumship in the week, and we'll have a divine service at the weekend. But also, I know with Bitten, where Susie is, they all have philosophy evenings, they have the circle evenings, they have the coffee mornings, the get-togethers, and things like that. So it's not all grim. It's not all grim.
Well, I mean, also too, in the U.S., it's spiritualism, you know, those connections to spirit, those people who welcome mediumship are few and far between. I mean, where you guys, I hate to say it this way, it's very much more common across the pond. When you come into the U.S., we fight uphill battles. We really do. I mean, and you're on my Facebook page. Within the last year, we had protesters. We had protesters during a platform event talking how we were talking to everything under the sun than what we were talking about. So for us, it is the biggest thing for us is having a communication, having a dialogue, having a conversation. And, you know, for me to tell someone their grandma's here isn't as valuable if they think I'm just talking to a demon. So for us, we got to re-educate. We got to spin the tale. And so sometimes it's about, hey, why don't you sit down and have a cup of coffee with me and find out I'm not as crazy as you think I am? Or we're all talking the same language. We're all talking the same information, just a little bit different.
And talking of crazy people, we'll say hello to the lovely Reverend Elaine, who Elaine was recently working over in America, and she came and worked for you guys there. And this is where the bond formed. And when she came back, she was just so infused by the energy and the passion that you guys have for what you do. So, and this is just how things start to link up. So, good evening, Elaine, you wonderful person. Oh, and there we go. Just to back it up, you have so much passion and enthusiasm. And that's a really salient point. We often take it too much for granted. This is... Since 2020, that wonderful time, we actually started to communicate more firstly outside of our own area, because we were quite isolationists. You know, we would stick to our county, what your version of state. But since 2020, and the online phenomena started to really grow, we were linking up with people up and down the country, and then around Europe, and then around the world. And it was fascinating. One of the things that always was a wow moment for me was the fact that, say, in the UK, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of churches and centres. That is not the case, even in Europe, just across a short stretch of water. That is not the case. And you can see and you can gauge the differences. I mean, they do teach in Europe, a common phrase is English mediumship as a sort of like a wherewithal on how the mediumship should be presented, which is very nice. But unfortunately as well, we've sort of overindulged, I think is probably, that's not quite the word I'm looking for. Where we have got so much choice, where we can go now any night of the week, go out and see a demonstration of mediumship. It's a great risk of losing its magic. Now, it's interesting you say about talking to people to prove you're not a demon. But we have the opposite side of that. That is to get people engaged and reignite the miracle of a communication, the sheer joy, the sheer experience. And this is one of my big things, is about experiencing spiritualism and spirituality. Reading is great, old films, old dialogues, podcasts, they're all really good, but nothing beats the experience of being there, being present at that time and immersed in that energy.
Absolutely. So, 100,000%. And I mean, I even know doing platform work, being able to give somebody a message that is, just be able to give them a message, give them evidence along with it. It blows them out of the water. And that's an experience you can never give them back. You're literally giving them proof that there's life after this world. Their mom is there with them. Their dad is there with them. You're giving them that experience, and there's nothing you can do to take it back. And that is what it's all about at the end of the day. I think it's about presenting spirit, providing that evidence. And then like here, we do events that circumvent it just to kind of help flush it out. You know what I mean? Turn it into an event where we gather people for the afternoon and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, Elaine and I are obviously linked, because I was just about to say the communication, the magic, we sometimes lack in the backup of education and information about what does that mean? I say to people, if you could talk to your mother again just for a minute, how do you feel? And they go, oh, great. But what does that mean to you? What doors, every time we have a message, to me, it's an invitation from the other world. They're just saying, hi, we're here. What are you going to do about it?
I agree full-heartedly. And I think the education piece now takes that a step further, because you and I as mediums, we have that ability to attach across the veil, but this is a skill set. This is an education base that's open to anybody. And I think that's what this is all about. As much as it's about that divine spark in every one of us that calls out to find spirit, I think that is what we're lacking in this day and age. I think so many people have so much faith in fear than anything else nowadays. They don't have faith in anything else. And I think as a medium, our job is to help instill faith in something greater.
Definitely.
If that is in the divine, if that is in anything else other than fear, we've done our job. And full-heartedly, I think that's what it's all about at the end.
Yeah, most definitely. Sorry, we've just got a couple of little glitches with you, Rev Bryan. You just keep pausing. It's not ruining it. It's just...
Sorry about that. I apologize.
No, it's all right. If I'm a bit late coming in, it's not sure because have you finished or are you paused?
Okay.
But again, you've touched on something really relevant, the fear factor. I mean, we are in a very fearful world, yet we don't feel comfortable talking about it. And when you have these, and especially like you guys do, have that informal, unstructured approach to trans communication as part of the proceeding, not the whole point of the proceeding. I mean, that has got to be a really valuable tool. We have it in our demonstrations, in our services. We encourage the sitters, to speak up and say, yes, no, don't understand. But we limit then the question that should come with it. And you can only really achieve that in a less formal way, a less formal presentation. We had a family gathering here the other week. We haven't done one for quite a while, and that is a really informal gathering. It's members of the congregation coming up, talking about different aspects, taking questions. I think actually it's quite embarrassing because 3 people got up and were praising me up, and I'm going, oh, stop it. At one stage, I thought, is this my eulogy? Have I died? But it was a great energy to work in because people were free to ask, people were free to question, people were free to engage with it. You can go in and see a demonstration, see a service, and although the medium, when they're doing the job to the best of their abilities, is bringing that atmosphere in and that engagement in, it finishes when the service finishes. And people walk out the door, and the next day, it's gone. Whereas if we can engage with people over a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, in that relaxed atmosphere and moving between the planes, that's going to be, to me, a much more experiential experience for the sitter because they can actively engage. They can actively ask questions.
And I think part of that too is it's giving people that aha moment. And I use that terminology because we all have been in readings, we've all been in demonstrations where the individual gets the aha, where you can just see it in their eyes that the whole world just opened up to them. And I think that is what this is about. And as a medium, our job is to give them that aha moment and for them to take that information home with them, for them now to use this as the ability to do their personal work, to do their communication, their conversation with spirit. And I think twofold here. One, I think, and no disrespect to anybody, I think older school mediumship always was about gatekeeping. They didn't want to share information. They were very quiet to share it in the United States. Versus nowadays, the information is readily available. And now it's becoming to more relevant to those who can share the information, who can present the information, and who can do the work. I mean, because nowadays it's one thing for you to make a comment and be wrong, but they can Google it 5 minutes later and find out if you're right or wrong. So yeah. It's more about the information. It's more about the presenting spirit and getting out of your own way. And one of my biggest things I talk about, and I probably taught Elaine this one, is what fear really is. It's false evidence appearing real. And the problem is we use that as ways to diminish ourselves, diminish what we're doing. And at the end of the day, it's what we use to stick ourselves with. And so if you can take fear and turn it into a superpower, turn it into your ability to conquer the world, there's nothing wrong with it. But fear that's keeping you eating bonbons and your hair curlers at home is not viable. And so it's really about replacing that fear with faith and knowing that at the end of the day, it's all going to work itself out, and we got to live life one way or the other.
That's fascinating. Thank you. I love that. I'm online next week with the lovely Sandra Champlain taking the evening service with her online. She's asked for a theme. And I was just sat and chatting with upstairs, and the theme of peace came through, but a very interesting tag came with that about we're always looking for peace, but actually we've got to create peace in the first place. And similarly, as with everything, double-edged swords, we create fear. We fear for fear itself. We are creating that energy.
We're addicted to it. I tell every single person I want to create cards that say fear addiction group, because what we tend to do is we tend to be addicted to it. And if we don't have the fear, we will look for it. We will find the next fear, the next tag to be afraid about. And so the more we're used to that fear adrenaline, it takes a lot more to get us past it. And that's, we can't operate in fear. I watched a while ago, they were talking about people doing different styles of mediumship and learning how to work with spirit and stuff like that. Someone created a book and talked about how to use fear for mediumship. They were talking about using the fear conversation as a way to tap in, touch into that. And I'm sitting here going, that is not the way to read. To read in anxiety, to read in fear, that is nothing to be taught. And I think what we're doing is, I think we're teaching people to be afraid. We're teaching people to fear stuff, when in reality, there's no reason for it. We have enough on a daily basis.
That's very true. Sadly, and this is not limited to spiritualism, although we're spiritualists and although we see it and although it affects us deeply. At times such as this, when there's great challenge everywhere you look, it's also going to be that spawning ground for grifters coming in.
Yep.
They're all going to find that little tagline. They're all going to find that little hook to try and get money out of you, because at the end of the day, that is what is going on. And it's becoming more and more prevalent now. And thankfully, most people are aware enough to go, yeah, that's great, but no, thank you. But there are still, new people investigating, because and when we have these difficulties in our world, which we didn't have before 2020, we were going, oh God, it's Christmas again. How did that happen? Because we were living on this accelerated timeline, and we just went through stuff because nothing really challenged us. Today's world, from the minute we get up in the morning, we've got these challenges facing us. But that is going to make people look for answers.
Absolutely.
And investigate. Obviously, as spiritualists, we want to make everybody a spiritualist. That's not to be. But we can always help and encourage people to find something. If there's any philosophy, belief system, or practice, or whatever, if its foundations are in helpfulness, are in healing, are in acceptance of others, that's great. I don't give a monkeys. As long as that is the tag in there. But if the tag in there is, if you listen to me, you will be saved. I mean, we've been hearing this. We talk about New Age, but there's no such thing as New Age, because all these, what we've termed New Age today, is recycled, going back to the 1930s, 1940s. So it's not new at all. It's just the same thing with a new brightly coloured package. But when you go into it, you go, oh, right, here we go. Here we go. There's the catch.
You're absolutely right when it comes down to it, because it's no different than when you had all the people dying during the Depression, or you had the folks dying in the war. They come back, their families are desperately looking to something to cling on to. And the problem is, if they don't find it, they will look for it. They will look for it one way or another. And I think this is when your job, my job, all of this stuff tends to be forced to the forefront for us to be able to do the job and to be able to show people what spirit is all about. And, you know, I always talk and I use capital S or lowercase s when I refer to spirit. And a lot of times as I'm talking, people are like, are you talking about God? I'm talking about spirit. I don't care what that looks like. Spirit is divine no matter what. And it's really about taking a deep breath, letting these people know that everybody's here to treat them, you know, treat them at their core. And like I tell people every single day, I can tell you based on you being Jewish, you being a Christian, you being Muslim, I can help you down this path. You just may not want to listen to me. I have the information here. And that's what this is all about.
Very true. Very
It's
true.
about educating. I think that's what it boils down to.
Exactly. Education. Really interesting comment there from the lovely Susie. Doesn't help that we have some spiritual teachers that will close a group by placing a cloak of protection. Therein promotes fear to the newbies.
See, this speaks to me.
Yeah.
Can I take this conversation since no one knows me? I can say what I want, right? So I think part of the problem here is I think years ago, I think people used fear as a individuals as a way to say, look at me, I'm the big medium and I'm better than you. And oh my God, the spirits attack me, more as a way to garner, to brace the group, to show all the, you know, that I'm better than you. And nowadays we're not in that mindset anymore. And I agree, like the cloaks of protection, the heavy psychic protection conversations, things like that. All that does is teach people to fear other people or to fear spirit. And if we all know as spiritualists, there is nothing to fear from spirit, then why are we doing protection spells? Why are we doing protection cloaks? Why are we doing psychic X, Y, or Z? And if you really truly think about it, if it's energy, doesn't matter if it's good or negative, it's energy. Would you ask a Christian to pray for you? It's energy, no matter what. I'd ask the Satanist to pray for me. I don't care. It's prayer. It's energy coming towards me.
It's energy and intent.
Exactly. And if I'm a divine being, no matter what energy I get, I can create with it.
Yeah. Going to New Zealand. We are far flung this evening. Hello. In New Zealand, we have a small but active spiritualist community, but importantly, we have a spiritualist indigenous culture. So we can increasingly translate spiritualist philosophy into who we are as a people, and working on this in Australia too. And you guys energize and inform this work, so I always tune in. Thank you. Each of us can be a translator, taking the philosophy and delivering into public policy. And thanks for informing this work. I love that. Listen, you want to see Lawrence run away, you start saying how good I am, and that's it, I'm gone. But I love that because I always say, you know, we have a good congregation here. And again, this is not crowing or showing off. We have a good congregation here. But I know every week, each demonstrator that's invited to work here, their message in the address will probably reach 40, 50, 60%, but not the other 60, 50, 40% who aren't picking up on that. But the following week, the next demonstrator will reach those. So it's a you know, we have this thing, don't we? We're looking for the answer, but there isn't the answer. Today's answer, tomorrow we might go, oh, actually, I don't think that's right. So it's this continual evolution, and it's very personal. And I don't think we ever get to the answer. We have the various epiphanies on our way, but we're continuing. It's a continual progress. and taking into account we are eternal beings. So it is this ongoing quest, and we come back here to the education. And again, if you go to an educator and you don't gel, do you know what? That's fine. That is still a lesson.
I think I was reading Elaine's message actually. So part of the problem here is that I think you nailed this. We're internal beings. We're living life upon lives and all these wonderful opportunities to come back to this plane of existence from spirit. Problem is, we think this is the one opportunity to learn. We think this is the one answer. I don't think that's what this is. I think it's a culmination. I think it's multiple lives span over multiple lifetimes, multiple creationships for us to get the idea and to learn what it is. I really truly think, and I always laugh and say, I have a horrible joke. When we get to heaven, God is going to look at you and say that you chose the wrong God and I'm in another castle. At the end of the day, like the Super Mario Brothers conversation here, because you just chose the wrong one. And I don't think it's chose the wrong one as a negative. I think it's chose the wrong one for your soul's purpose and for what that is. Because I really truly think there's times we belong here to be Muslim, to learn what it's like to be a Muslim. We're here to learn what it's like to be a devout Catholic. We're called to be an evangelical and learn how to spread the word. I think they're all paths that we're all designed to be on. And I think it takes soul progression to be able to do different stuff. I think it takes soul's progression to be open to the idea of spirit. It takes soul's progression to be able to talk about past lives. I think it takes progression and, more important, education and answers.
Yeah, and somebody's just brought that in. Everyone's at different levels of evolution. But tell me, you are a reverend in metaphysics, is that correct?
That is correct.
You are. Could you give us like a simple, if possible, a simple understanding of metaphysics v spiritualism, or are they the same?
In a lot of ways, they're the same. So metaphysics and spirituality, we kind of smash them together in the United States. And so the metaphysics is more of the science of, or more of the information behind it, so to speak. So because I knew you were going to throw this at me, I did a quick Google search. Metaphysics is traditionally defined as the study of being in existence, focusing on questions such as what it means for something to exist. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of telling you what it is, I thought we can show you what it is. So it goes back to the question that me and you talked about at the beginning of this. So the conversation is that the past, the present, and the future are all going on simultaneously. So what you did in your past life, what you're doing in your current life, and what you're doing in your future life all happens at once. So that's the reason why I can heal in my past life and heal this life. I can heal in this life, heal in my past life, or I can heal in my future life and heal myself today. And I think that is the part where we, as mediums, we have this unique opportunity to reach into a different timeline. We have the ability to reach into a different area and present that information. Yes, I'm weird. If people's eyes are glaring over, I apologize in advance. They can send me hate mail later. But I think I really truly think that is how we're able to do what we do and understand how that happens and understand that this information, and some people are going to say, well, that sounds like quantum theory. It is. It really, truly is. And I've always said that science can't explain. That's all it is. And at some point, they reverse. At some point, science is explaining magic. And if you want to question me on it, I can give you examples down the road. You know, it's the whole E equals MC squared. If the human has electricity, where does that electricity go when we die? Has to go somewhere, right? Because we know based on that conversation, it's neither destroyed, it's not destroyed, nor created. It's just there. So where does it go? So
yeah, no, I love that. Thank you. Even my mind could grip that. The interesting thing there, when you touch on the science aspect, is that, you know, us human beings, we do have this propensity that we look for somebody to save us, or we look for somebody to blame. And it's the same sometimes in spiritualism regarding the science, because the job of the scientist is to present the facts. The job of the observer is to assimilate those facts and draw their own conclusion. But sadly, a lot of people keep saying, well, science proved it. Science hasn't proven anything. All science has done all the way along the line is they investigate a subject, they go into it in n amount of depth, and they present the conclusion. You know, and if you're not ready or you don't want to accept that, you're going to deny it. But if you go into things with an open mind and just go, oh, okay, this is interesting. One of the things I love in spiritualism, and why I have the passion for spiritualism, is because I believe that everything we do has an evidential trail. Now, obviously, we have transcommunication, the evidential mediumship. There is the evidence. Do you understand this person? Yes. Woohoo. But even in our philosophy, certainly in our healing, and in our works, if we look for the evidence, and I'm not talking about making things fit, things will happen. We will have that continuity of thought and direction come together most gloriously. And it's up to me. Oh, that's just a coincidence. I was thinking of this address and that person happened to mention that title of that very same. Oh, it's all a coincidence. Or I can go, you know what? Thank you. That's great. I understand what's going on here to my belief system based upon my knowledge. That we are all linked, we are all intertwined, everything is always and everywhere at once. And there's no surprise that you've picked up, or I've picked up off of you, who knows?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think this is important conversation, more on the part too of why sometimes we get a reading and it doesn't resonate with us. And it's not because the medium did not present the information. I think it's we were not in the right headspace to evaluate the evidence, or we are not willing and ready to face the evidence. You know, and I think that's really what it boils down to. I think sometimes as a medium, our job is to hold a mirror up to people, and sometimes they don't want to look in it. And I think that's when this becomes, like I said, this is when this conversation is very relevant about the evidence, about people saying that, well, the scientists boiled this evidence down for proof. We can do the same thing, but if the person doesn't want to hear it,
Yep.
They're not going to hear it, no matter what the evidence is, no matter what the conversation is. And I hate to throw this out there, but it's the same thing as saying that the planet is X years old. You're going to have 25,000 conversations on how old this world actually is. You have to be in the right headspace, the right education, the right knowledge to actually use the information and actually make a decision. And I think that's what this is all about. When we're making a decision on our spiritual path, we're making evidence on our energetics moving forward at the end of the day of all this. And I think that's really what this is all about. It's allowing yourself to be able to take this information and evaluate it one way or the other, really, truly. and objectively looking at it. Because, I love a lot of readers in the US will be like, you can't have a friend sit with you. I'm reading you one-on-one. I love it when a friend sits. Do you know why? They will look at them and go, that sounds exactly like you. Don't you understand that's your mom? And it's because they were able to hear it. They were able to objectively get the information versus somebody who had a notion that they were talking to grandma, or they didn't think that was who they were. And I think sometimes that's the name of the game here, is getting people in that headspace to accept the evidence.
Yeah, it's really common in Dems. This is not a sexist thing, but if you go to a couple and you go to the husband or the male partner, they're sat there going, but the missus is often sat there going,
100,000%. It's the same conversation. Exactly. And and especially I don't even think it's the skeptics. I think it's those people who don't want to present that information. They don't want that information shared. They don't want the evidence out there, whatever the case may be, because you can present all the evidence in the world, but unless you're willing to take it and run with it, there's nothing you can do with it. And I even, it's the person who has evidence that their marriage is failing. They're going to hold on to that evidence and go, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, until the last possible minute. Was the evidence wrong, or was the person wrong?
Yeah. So I just recently had a very good example of that. Somebody I know, I'd given them a reading about a year ago, and I'd quoted a time, and I said, come this month, things are really going to change for you. It's going to be very liberating and very freeing. And cool, the excitement was there. Unfortunately, the month that I'd said engaged with the loss of a very close, beloved partner. And this person's, obviously in the depths of despair, which we all would be. And I was talking, and she said, but this month, you said this month was going to be liberating. And I'm like, I've got to be compassionate here. And, I can't force a thought upon there. But the thought was there of, well, you've been nursing this person for 4 years, which anybody would do. I fully get that. That is no longer part of your life. So this, again, is subjective, isn't it? We hear what we want to hear.
Elaine said that it's perspective and perception. She's 100% right.
Yeah.
2020. We say the expression 2020. Hindsight is 2020, and it's the truth.
And expectation as well. That is something I find. I don't know if you have the same here. But I always say to a sitter, if I'm engaging in private sitting, please be open to anybody coming through. Because often somebody will get fixated on one person and discount everything else. Or the person that comes through is somebody they may not wish to hear from.
I've had that situation as well.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't know what you guys call it. We'll call it piggyback. But sometimes what has to happen is that grandpa, that mom has to step forward to bring in your husband, to bring in your child, because the way this all works. And I think sometimes they just are so quick to close the door on somebody, they don't remember who's all out there. And we talked a little bit about metaphysics here. But I joke that for a medium, we pick up the phone and we answer that question. You have a whole room full of people now talking. And then what happens is grandma can interpret for the husband. Grandma can talk. My internet's being weird right now, and I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. We're getting the gist of it. That's the main thing. So, yeah, that is really true. That is really very true. And we tend to forget, do we not, that when these people were on the earth, that we could have a discussion with them and they might actually disagree with what we say. But because we're coming through in a message, we would probably have that underlying overall experience of that person, that they're going to give me comforting words. They're going to tell me everything's all right, and they're going to tell me, you're doing really well. Whereas on the earth, they may not have said that. And when that happens, because they're expecting this comfort and expecting, just this thing to make you feel good, that you just get sage advice, that's when, well, that's not them. They wouldn't say that. And I think, well, I'm sorry. I think they might have.
I think we forget ego. So when we pass, ego goes away. And I have an interesting way to explain ego. Ego is edging God out. And so if you're no longer edging God out, if you're no longer in your ego, the conversation's going to change. It has to. We're our divine self. We're our true spark. That information that comes through has to change. And I think that's where on multiple levels, we have to understand the information is going to change. And that's the name of the game here, is we have to understand that that person who was here is not the same person. They have a glimmer of it. They have a spark of that person, but whatever the case may be. And the other part of this is, I always talk about past lives here as well. If Sally was 20 other people in a past life, is she really going to hold on to all the memories of Sally? Probably not. She's going to hold on to the key facts, just enough to show who she is.
That is so true. For the purpose of identification, we've got to have that essence of that person as we remember them. But then we've also got to bring in that acceptance that that person is going through a process of evolution that we can't hear in the physical. So it's a very difficult subject. I did try it a couple of times in the service, and to ask the sitter if they got a question for them. And both times, when I said, have you got, and I'd literally got that out of my mouth before the answer came in. And when I said, have you got a question? They said, well, where are they now? And this lady was saying, well, you know how much I love traveling. You want to see where I'm going because it's amazing. And I just think, wow, do you know what? That brings in this whole new vibe about this person. That just starts to flesh out what we are continually saying, that life continues, not fixed memories. We don't plant the flag and stay there forever as that. We are going to evolve, and that, because that's what life is about.
I mean, I talk about evolving, and people have to evolve. The problem is we forget the dinosaurs were here too. The dinosaurs did not evolve and they died. And so if people refuse to evolve, you're gonna have to die. And that's part of that conversation. And I don't mean that I don't mean that in a nasty, horrible way, but that's what happens. If you stop evolving, we stop living.
Yeah. It's stagnation, isn't it?
And no one needs to be in stagnation. That's the name of the game here. And I think that's what hurts us the most, is staying still. It's the people who want to live 20 years ago. That doesn't help you. We need to live now. And part of metaphysics is everything is now. It's right. Everything is happening now. Problem is if you're not acknowledging everything is happening now, what happens now? Yes, it's a weird question.
No, I love it. I love it because my brain is going overtime on that one. There'll be Elaine jumping in there. I must catch up, actually. Some lovely comments coming in here. get rid of excessive ego and use truth instead. Yeah. One aspect of that, I think one of the biggest threats facing spiritualism today is we're going to run out of adjectives, because every advert that I see and every post now, the wonderful, the exceptional, the multi-talented, the brilliant, this must be, talking about mediums. And I'm just like, why are we worshipping a medium? I'm sorry, I'm just getting a little bit frazzled with that now. Why are we worshipping and putting this medium up on this plinth when actually it's the work and the wholeness of what we are engaged in that doesn't get a mention, because it's always about, oh, they're amazing, you can't miss this person, they're absolutely astounding. Again, it's a subjective opinion. I've chaired services where I've sat there and just thought, okay. And afterwards, people said, wasn't that amazing? And I'm going, good. I'm glad you got something out of it. Personally, I didn't, but that's fine. That's fine. It's not my club. As long as you're reaching people and doing the job, top marks to you. Maggie Baker saying, when my dad passed, it was such a shock to us all. My mum was beside herself. I found that I was angry with Mum, as she had said that she had not loved my dad for the past 10 years. However, once he went, he was the best thing since sliced bread. I think sometimes that's why someone won't or can't take the message, because their view of them has changed.
I agree with that, because I'm even going to say it this way, and Maggie, this isn't me reading you or anything like that. But if Dad was a horrible person on this earth, and now all of a sudden Dad is a divine being on the other side as a human, I may not be willing to accept that.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I still want to hold on to him as a horrible human being. Yep. For whatever reason, it makes me feel good, or it allows me to do my thing.
Because we're not ready to make that step change.
Absolutely.
I get that. I absolutely get that. And I always understand that. And if anybody said I don't want to hear, that's fine. But I've just been reminded, somebody once did try to take control of my mediumship. Do you know what I mean? In a dem. When, you say something and they come back with all this cleverness and you're just like, really? And it turned out it was a husband in a long line of them, and it was, well, I don't want to hear from them. And I said, well, he wants to come through and say he's sorry, and I'm working for him, not for you. All right, love, so you do what you like with that, and I'm moving. I just thought, oh, go away.
And I agree with Elaine that I think the more people get involved in spiritualism, the more people are going to demonstrations, the more people are going to divine services. I think there has to be education that goes along with it. And I don't mean education from TikTok and social media and all that stuff. I mean legit education. And I think that's just as important as a divine service or a demonstration. And so anytime I do a demonstration, I try to work education in it as well. One way or the other, that education has to be presented so that they understand what's going on. Sometimes Mom's talking about now, well, you know what? When you're in spirit, now's a little bit different, because it could be 6 months from now. It could be 6 months ago. It could be 6 years from now. It's a different perspective. And so educating people like that, I think, helps to give them little bits of information as they can take it along the way.
This is so true. And again, as one of the good effects of the explosion of spirituality on the internet, that we are talking more and we are sharing information and we are questioning things. We are able to have wonderful nights like this. We've been doing this now for 4.5 years, I think. And we've had some great people, except for Elaine. She was the only one that swore ever. I've had ex-alcoholics, I've had ex-junkies, and Elaine was the one that dropped the F-bomb, bless her. But moving on, Elaine. Susie Woodley is saying some recipients don't have the understanding that their loved ones evolve and continue to progress their soul. Very true, Susie, and this is exactly what we're talking about, this educational side. I'm going to find it really interesting, things within the SNU, and seeing if we're going to start to see a little sea change come in there with the election of Simon James, because he's very forward thinking. You know, we would look, I say, in the UK, we are blessed, cursed, that we have so many churches and centres. And we have all these principles and practices of how things are done. And it quickly becomes doing things by rote rather than doing things inspirationally or doing things, you know, under the guidance of the other world. Or just, you know, God forbid, change something.
And I agree. And I will be that person. British mediumship in the United States is amazing. We want it, we seek it out because it's what the expectation is. But at the same time, I think where we are, we have a different, where we still have fun with it. We still play with it over here, I think, to a degree, because we don't have the structure. We don't have all the, this is how it has to be done. I mean, we did a healing night here at the shop, and we blessed oil for the event. You know, everyone's like, well, where did the idea come from? Spirit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't expected. We just did it.
Yep. It's keeping that balance in as well, to be working and acknowledge that you are working under the inspiration of spirit. When we first started off online and talking, I started saying about evidential mediums, healing mediums, philosophical medium, because we use this generic term for 100 years of a medium. And when you say the word medium, immediately you've got somebody stood on the platform saying, I've got your mother here. But medium is just that generic term for the multitude of what we had. Our spiritual cafe here last night where we meet, very informal, round a table, cup of coffee, cake. It's always good when there's cake involved. And we were talking, and one of the participants said about they were having prophecy in early years. They knew, and it was verified, when there was going to be a passing around. And this deeply disturbed them to the point of saying, sitting there and going, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it, and subjugating that. You know, again, I said, had that been evolved educationally, educated way, it's not something to be fearful of. Because we go back thousands of years, every tribe would have the elder, and that's where the people, lovely people from New Zealand are talking about Stansted Farm. You know, the village elder or something would prophesize when the crops are going to be good, when's the time to plant the crops, when there's going to be famine, when there's going to be, it wasn't just the nice fluffy things, it was real hard gritty stuff of, wait, this is coming up, you need to be prepared. And we've softened that down now, because generally there is this approach that, have you heard of CERT, C-E-R-T?
I have not.
Okay, it was a structure taught, and it was very popular. And it was communicator, evidence, reason for coming, tie up. And that was used a great deal in the training and the formation of evidential mediums. But that's too rigid, but we didn't see that at the time. We came up with this CERT, communicator, the identification of the communicator through the evidence, why they're here. I'm sorry, shouldn't be doing that. Why they're here, and to tie up. And that's it, you know, they say, love you very much and thank you, goodbye. But mediumship, you know, is very free flowing. And if you allow that freedom to come in, It's like a private sitting. You know, we talk about private sittings and they're going to have to last 30 minutes or 45 minutes. I've done sittings, and after 20 minutes, the spirit has said what they need to say for this time.
We do hours in the U.S. We do hour sessions, and so we use a lot. I get out tools. We have to get tools out as part of that discussion, because for me to talk for an hour, I need something additional to talk about, because it's filling in the blanks, it's fitting in the additional information. And I think part of this, I really feel parts of this come from the demonstrations. You know, people are looking for the information and they want additional information. And I think what they're looking for is they're looking for the education, they're looking for the knowledge, not always just talking to grandma. And I think as a reader, as a medium, I think our job is to provide that education one way or another. It's like a pew jockey for a Catholic church. I'm sorry. You know, I think, you know, you have some great Catholics, but you also have those that just sit in the pews. They show up, they go through their calisthenics, and they go home. And I think part of this is also true for mediumship. I think there's spiritualists who show up for a platform, and that's all they show up for.
Yeah.
They're not looking to do the work. They're not looking to be spiritual. They're just wanting to know what grandma has to say. And I think that's those people who are needing the service more than anything.
Very true. Very true. Sparked off quite the thing there. The lovely Elaine, very active tonight, typing very well, isn't she? She's just saying that she's going to hit me when she's next in. You are so right, Brian. I've never laughed so much as when I work with you guys. And that really is an important thing, isn't it? Because when we can introduce that laughter, that levity, not to the point of that taking the lead role or becoming the comedian or the entertainer. But do you know what? When I work with spirit, all right, there are times the seriousness or the heaviness or whatever emotion will come through. But the majority of the time, it's one of great joy, of great levity. And why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? Mum's talking to her daughter again. You know, dad's talking to his son. Why would that be really heavy energy? It's not. It's great joy.
I think it's people. I think people make it heavy. We assume it's death. We assume it's dying. We assume it's this heavy information. And I think that's when we need to change it up. And I think that's what, you know, it's a joyful time. It's a time to be, you know, it's proof there's something after this. We don't curl up in a ball and go away.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think, or better yet, in the US, you still have cold readers. That's the other issue here. You have us who are doing the work, who's trying to do spirit, who's doing a service, and then you have somebody who's doing cold reading. You know, and I even know someone who took a class and were told cold reading is the best way to start.
Yeah. Just for the enlightenment, because we're going to have people on here tonight and people watchers in the future who are new. So just a quick outline of what is cold reading.
I knew you were going to do that to me.
I know.
So I'm going to use cold reading, and the easiest way to say it, and if you're watching this, and I mean no disrespect by this, is it's a magician's trick. It's a mentalist trick. It's what it literally is you're using basic canned knowledge, basic conversations to present spirit in a way. And I always use my example of the person who stands up and says, you know what, I have a male here. Does someone have a male in spirit? Oh, you know what, their name must start with an R. Does someone know a name that starts with an R? Maybe Robert. The room's hand is still up. And now you bring up the next part of the equation. Oh, by the way, I feel like they're a dad. Keeping it very generic as possible because you're blanketing a large group of people. And, you know, you never really dial it down. And that's really cold reading. Versus if you come to one of our events, or you go to a good event, the person lines right up with you and says, "Can I have your name?" And they go right to you. It's for you. It's not for the entire room. And I think that's the difference between a cold reading and a hot reading, if we want to call it that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did I do a good job?
You did an excellent job. Well done.
Sorry, I hope I did that right.
No, you did it. See, that's interesting, because that's one thing where I have various courses running here for the development of the psychic, development of mediumship, development of healing. And something people say, did I do that right? And I say, well, how do you feel? You know, because right in my eyes is different from yours. Did it feel right for you? Do you feel that you could embellish more on that? Do you feel that, yes, I hit that on the head? Or, you know, because
I'm more worried about stepping on toes and saying something I shouldn't be saying.
Listen, your friends with Elaine, she'll do that first, I'll tell you.
So I have a tendency to do that.
But do you know what? We need that. You know, there's that line again between the humor and being frivolous. And there is that line about the pushing of people and their understanding, like the just offending people for the sake of it. You know, I've seen mediums who have this wonderful, adept way of engaging the sitter, and without them really being conscious of it, they're just pushing them. They're getting them into a place where they're out of the comfort zone, but they're happy to be there. I've also seen mediums just go totally the other way and, you know, just come out with something atrocious and go, well, it must be right, it's spirit. You know, no, it's not spirit, mate, it's you.
That's also, I'm not a big fan of people who, and I don't know how to say this and not offend people, but I'm not a fan of when somebody shoves a reading down someone's throat. When in demonstrations, or, you know, a personal reading or whatever, when you're trying to force the reading, I think that is, you know, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. And not only that, how do you know that individual sitting in front of you or whatever is aware of the situation or willing to acknowledge it? That's what, or in that situation, willing to acknowledge it. I have a very bad conversation that I always talk about. You know, there's the famous mediums, there's the famous people now who go out to Starbucks and give a reading to the guy behind the counter, and they give them the reading. To me, that is a gross overstep. That should never be going on. Now, what people don't realize is the famous people, you know, you have the director walk in, you have the makeup artist goes in and has all these wonderful conversations with them before they ever see the celebrity medium. Now you have people who think it's okay to go on TikTok with their camera and walk into Walmart and give someone a message. Yeah. I'm waiting for someone to get a knuckle sandwich out of it.
Yeah, that's true. Something I teach on the psychic courses here, always one of the tenets that I enforce. And so psychic is wonderful, but you do not use it to invade other people's privacy. You know, how would you like it if somebody sat there going through your diary, or somebody going through your contact list on your phone? You would take offense at that. And it's very similar with the psychic side. You must not go prying into areas that are not fit without the other person's engagement or permission. And I always add this as well, and you need to be very careful. I said, because if you start poking around in somebody who's very adept in their psychic work themselves, they will know it. They will know it, and they will come back at you. Literally, they will come back at you and go, what the hell are you doing? Anyway, Lovely Leslie Thomas. We have cold readers here also. It's them that give genuine mediums, spiritualists, and spiritual being a bad name. Yeah, very true. Very true. Restore hope. Nice to bring that in. Thank you. Messages are healing for both parties. I like that approach because I always say, I'm working as a healer, not only for the incarnate, but also for the discarnate. If you and I were really good friends and chatting away, and then I took offense and ended the friendship and then went over, do you know what? Somewhere along the line, I would want to come back and say, do you know what, Brian? My fault. I overreacted.
I mean, it's building, it's making those connections. It's rebuilding those connections is a lot of what it is. And I think people don't always realize that. If you died today, what unfinished work would you have? What unfinished work would you want to do still? And I think that's what people don't realize. It's a lot of first, as mediums get started, they're always like, my anxiety's through the roof. I'm really nervous. Is it your anxiety or is it spirit's anxiety because it's the first time they've been able to talk to their daughter since they died, or whatever the case may be? You're dealing with a double-edged straw here.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. I mean, it is a full lifetime. You can just take even just one facet. Say with psychometry, you could just study psychometry for your whole life and not get to the full limits or knowledge of its workings. So we are working on all these various different levels with people and doing the best we can to encourage them to then go out and find out more. Because there is so much information out there now.
And I think they rely on us, and I think this is what becomes the worst thing is I think it's the people who are teaching classes who don't know how to teach classes, who don't know how to educate people, and now they're taking a class, and the only thing they hear about the class is how to put up the dark protection cloak and keep all the negative spirits away, and that's their takeaway.
Yeah.
That's their takeaway.
I totally agree with you there. A person just springs to mind, started off as what I call an electronic medium, so working online. And now they are teacher, mentor, healer, spirit artist, transfiguration medium, and evidential medium. And I'm like, my goodness, how much have you evolved in 48 months? Anyway, we won't go down that line because some conversations about spiritualism, people pick up on the negative stuff and it just turns the energy.
Yep, absolutely. I'm not, I always tell people I'm not trying to say this is negative. I'm just saying, you have this, and I think that's the reason why this, everybody talks about protection with mediumship. And I'm like, if you're working with the divine, you're in the divine. Why do we need protection? Do you need protection from God?
And the mind is a very powerful thing. And if you go looking for something, why are you surprised that's what you find?
Absolutely. Metaphysics 101. You ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the original conversation. Remember that fear conversation? If your anxiety is on a repeat, you're in fear. And when fear shows up, what you were afraid about shows up in your life. Did you manifest it? Did you create it? Was that your next prayer? And I'll have people sit there all day long and go, well, I didn't pray for that. What was your mantra? Your mantra was fear. Your mantra was about this happening, and it happened. Did you not ask the universe for it?
Yeah.
Oh, crap. Change, control your thoughts, control your reality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Well, the hour, a quarter, has absolutely flown by, which is absolutely wonderful. But before we go,
Great. I hope you enjoyed our time together.
Definitely. And also share a little news here. You yourself will be in the UK, we're looking at next April, was it?
Yes, we are. That's the hope.
So who will be coming over? Yourself?
Myself, Michael will be coming over. Shane's going to come along as well. Shane does not work typically. Shane does some spirit art and stuff like that, but he probably won't work while he's overseas. You'll definitely have myself. You'll have Michael. And I noticed there was a few people inviting me over. So if anybody is interested in having me come over, like Susie, definitely would be interested in coming over that direction. I'm going to say, reach out to me or reach out to you to kind of make these connections.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward very much to meeting you in person. As I say, Elaine just came back and so enthused about meeting you all. So,
and I think Elaine, I think it's a different energy both ways. It's getting an opportunity to see how you guys work, and then it's an opportunity to see how we work. And I was absolutely thrilled to work with Elaine in that energy. A lot of the people here at the shop are like, I'm not working with her, and I'm like, why? I'll work, because it's an opportunity to work with someone you haven't worked before. And I think that's the name of the game: having an opportunity to see people, having an opportunity to work differently and see stuff different. And I think that's the name of the game here. Plus, maybe I have a little bit of a different mindset than some people.
And to me, that's brilliant. That is brilliant, because this is about re-energizing. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. We know that. I know myself, when I started running the church here, I made changes, and not everybody liked them. And we had to have the conversations, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. And I always said to people, listen, if I come here into the church and there's nobody here, I'm wrong, and I need to change what I've changed. But actually, we're getting new people in. But we can't keep things, again, metaphysics side, people want to keep it the same way as they did when they walked in 40 years ago. It hasn't happened for a while here, but I did go through a phase of people going, oh no, that's my seat. And being the little bugger that I am, every time I heard that, the next day I would change seating around, because I didn't want this creation of that's my seat.
I went to a seance not too long ago, and the person who was actually conducting it gave assigned seats, and she placed people where she wanted them. And to be honest, I think that's probably the best thing possible, because you're not sitting next to somebody you're not. I think it helps in the energy and everything else.
In a seance situation, I agree. It's the same as circle. When I start up the circle courses, I'll let everybody find their own seat naturally. The following week, I will have a shifty around, because you can just sense where the energies need to be moved, or whatever reason. But I was referring to this sense of ownership, that I come to the church, not every week when I choose to, but when I come, I want my seats. And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to support that sort of energy. It's not your seat. You haven't bought it. You're not here every week. And I know that sounds really horrible, but it's not, because the church is a living, thriving organism. And you've got to work very much on the energies and what happens and how that evolves. And sometimes that involves managing people and their wants and desires and their wishes. But we won't go too far down there. So, there we go.
I'm noticing this is going to be I have a feeling we won't have to look too far for people who want to let me come play.
Well, that's wonderful, because you're new, because you're invigorating, the passion comes over. And that is something we need to re-engage with. Have this passion. I get very passionate when I'm talking, especially the philosophy. That's my big love.
Why not be passionate about it? It's spirit. It's proof. It's something to lock onto.
Yeah,
I think that's the name of the game here.
definitely. So the bookings are going really well. That's
sorry, Lawrence. I apologize in advance.
no. No, that's fine. Absolutely fine. That's one of the things we were looking for. Brian, we have had a wonderful evening with you. I always find it very interesting with the guests and the spread. I mean, we've got New Zealand, Germany, France, all up and down the UK, and several American colleagues on tonight. And I just think that's wonderful because it spurs us on. You were talking about the cold reading culture in the US. In Europe, they have the psychic culture. That everybody was working on a psychic link and not really aware that they actually were working on the psychic side. It wasn't until spiritualism after 2020 started to gain more traction that people were going, oh, I thought I was making a link, but no, I'm not. I'm just linking with the sitter.
Yep.
This is how we grow.
My partner, Mike's an amazing psychic. He actually links via psychic. He'll start his psychic work and then bring in mom or dad. Where I bring mom and dad in and let mom and dad talk. That's how I operate. Everybody operates differently. There's not a wrong or a right here.
Exactly. I've been bringing in a few different services and going back to some of the things that we used to do in the movement many years ago. And the first one was on psychometry. Well, that caught me by surprise because the energy was through the roof. I was struggling to keep up with it. The second one I did was flower sentience, but using that psychic connection to then introduce the spirit. And do you know what? I love it. I love the flower sentience.
I do flower messages. I'm a flower message guy. And so I know Elaine said I do it differently, but I start with a vase of flowers and I present the flowers out to those people. And normally a loved one presents it and talks about it. And there's a reason why that flower is presented.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened here on Sunday. It was magical. It was absolutely magical.
Have you done one more question? Do you guys use smoke billets over there?
No, what is a billet?
So
in the UK, a billet is a wooden hut normally on an army camp where everybody would sleep.
All right, no, that's not a billet.
Right.
So think of a postcard, a blank postcard, and what you do is you actually move it across the fire. You move it across the flame, and it actually marks itself. You actually get designs, you actually get spirit, you get colors, you get all these neat stuff to be able to present.
Okay.
It's a completely different. It's a fun way to work. It's a nice takeaway for people, but at the same time, I've presented sonographs of someone's future grandchild or a picture of a dog, stuff like that. It's just insane.
Wonderful. Because we do have over here encaustic art, which is an iron and different colored waxes.
Right. Elaine had an opportunity to show me that when she was in the States. But this is simply using the smoke from a candle right on an index card.
Ooh. When you see on Facebook, Paul Church mysteriously burns down, it's your fault.
All right, I apologize. You don't. Okay. Side note: don't burn anyone's houses down, but you do not put it in the fire. It's right on top.
Yeah, I get that. Guess what I'm going to be doing in half an hour? Brilliant.
It is. I find it as humorous as all get out. The information that you pull. It's just like you're doing tea leaf readings. I'm our house tea leaf reader. To be able to use that as a tool on platform, to be able to use it as a way to connect, it's just phenomenal.
exactly a tool. And this is something I always emphasize in all my teaching. These are just tools. Do not put your power, your energy into, a deck of cards. Oh, this is it will only work if I have this deck of cards because this deck of cards is so special. I said, you're creating all these barriers. What's going to happen the day you lose your deck of cards? Is that it? You're going to have to give up? All these things are tools, and it's a great way. When we're working with mental mediumship, one of the things we need to do is to calm the mental mind. Well, if we can start doing that by sitting there with a flower and just sensing dirty hanky, that's lovely, isn't it? There's new reading, the hanky reading. If we can start taking our physical mind and, with the flower and feeling the stem and the color but allowing that to prompt the communication, that's what, to me, that's why it flows so much better at times.
And I also like tea leaf readings. I like the smoke messages because it gives physical proof back to the sitter. Sometimes it acts as that connection for that sitter. That spirit is still here. It's that physical connection to that loved one. And, it's one thing when I say dad's name starts with a C and I can show you on the card, it's a C, or I can show you in the teacup, it's a C. It's a different aha moment. And it seems to be less of a struggle. And I'm not sure why that is.
Because that is being kept quiet.
We also and I'm going to blame TikTok. We have this high craze of everybody reading tarot. So you come in and we'll have a tarot reader. People want to sit down and argue the tarot.
Yeah.
And they want to give themselves their own reading. It's like, so why are you here then?
Yeah.
You're sitting with me for a different perspective. You're sitting with me to get a message. And I think that's what this is all about at some point. I think some parts and parcel here really, truly is you're sitting with the person for a message from them based on their guide, their team, not yours. And I think sometimes people need that to identify that change of scenery. They need to change that perspective because it helps. It does help.
Oh, wonderful. Sorry, we're not going anyway. We're not holding you up, are we? I know it's daytime there and you're busy in the shop. Lovely Stephen Mager. Good question. We have slight regional variations here in the UK, mostly a north-south divide. Do you have similar with spiritualism in the States?
So I guess we need to have a conversation about spiritualism in the United States. Spiritualism in the United States is very few and far between. You have pockets of mediums, you have pockets of psychics, but as far as organized churches, we don't have them as much. We don't have the centers like you guys do, where you guys have a center on every corner. I have 1.5 hour away from me, and the next one is 4 hours. So it's a real big distance from that. And Elaine can joke and attest to that. Like they're not close by. So for us, you have this Christian slant in the United States, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. And that Christian slant does a lot in the South. It really divides the North and South as far as the mindset, the way people work. And I'm going to talk table tipping for lack of better words. You have people in the South who will do table tipping in a Christian church and call it spiritualism and call it's a presence of the Holy Spirit. And then you have in the North, you may have Lilydale doing table tipping in another way. So you really have this switch of stuff. You have this dichotomy of Southern Baptist. If you don't know Southern Baptist, it's brimstone and fire for everything we do. Or you have the North, which is very accepting of all of it. And, you have Lilydale and Cassadaga. You have all these centers to assist with. But really, truly, a lot of ways, most of us spiritualists in the United States are on our own, really, truly.
Excellent. Well, I hope that's answered your question, Stephen.
I hope that answered your question.
You will let me know if it hasn't. Brian, thank you.
Absolutely. It was fun.
Thank you. Fascinating evening, great company, and now it's just added that extra incentive for next year to see you guys in person and see your work, and really interesting what you can bring to the table. That shift in what we do, because I think the majority of spiritualist churches are looking for that change, are looking for that difference to come in, but also being mindful to still keep it within the realms of spiritualism, because we are getting assaulted a little bit by various different philosophies, which will say, well, it's all very nice and very cozy, but where's the evidence of it?
Right. I agree on that. I think evidence is key as well. It either needs to be evidence by physical evidence, or it needs to be evidence that it hits you here and you know it's true.
Yeah. Not just and it was Stephen that introduced this phrase to me. It's not just another grifter. So thank you, Stephen, for that. Rev Bryan, thank you. Thoroughly enjoyed this. If it's all right with you, we'll take the transcript of tonight's conversation, put that out as a podcast as well.
Absolutely. I'm good with that. Can you also, Lawrence, can you get me copies of all of this, and I will share it out on my social media and stuff like that as well for you guys?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. And also, guys, I'm going to do a shout out. If you do not have me on social media, feel free to add me. I put out posts. I do a lot of different stuff throughout my page. I do videos. A lot of neat information goes out via my page. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I do private work as well. So I always toss that out there as well.
And you also go out in the woods, half naked, working with the mediumship, which you were doing recently.
Some days I do platform mediumship at the medieval fair, and so you have an opportunity to see me work. I do that 7 weeks, so it's fun doing platform for a public venue. It's 100% public, so it's a different take on platform because you're reading general public.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're educating them along the way as you're giving them a reading. So it can be entertaining.
But it was the setting, the medieval fair. We don't have to use here, although it does seem like some people do want to revert to medieval times, but it's a different conversation. But it was fascinating in that setup, because in Ohio, you're just starting today, aren't you? About 10 weeks of medieval fairs.
Correct. So we actually did 7 weeks of the medieval fair just in Northeast Ohio. And now we have the Ohio Renaissance Festival. We have all these festivals that are all kicking up and going into full gear just in time for me to go to Salem. I get to go to Salem, Massachusetts for the month of October.
Ooh.
I'll be reading up there.
Excellent. Brian, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me have an opportunity to talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, joining us. And amazing, the spread that is open to us now. It's really heartwarming that we can talk like this. Remember, you can rewatch this either on our Facebook page, only for a short while now because Facebook has stopped holding videos, but our YouTube channel, the videos remain unaltered. Podcast will be coming out later tonight. You can watch us again tomorrow live from the church for our divine service with Jamie Williamson. And we will be back again next Saturday at 7:00. And I haven't got the calendar in front of me, so it's somebody wonderful. But in the meantime, it's a good night and wonderful, peaceful evening to you all from me and from Brian.
Good night, guys. Thank you.